and welcome to Count on Our Simplified Advice, a 360 podcast in partnership with Alex of Forbes, where we are going to simplify employee benefits. Now, my name is Nicolette Mashile. I'm also known as the Financial Bunny, and I am joined by the lovely Butsi Tladi, who is an executive consulting at Alex of Forbes. And she's really going to help us understand what is retirement. When we talk about young people are not taking retirement plans as quickly as possible, when we talk about only less than 10% of South Africans will be able to retire comfortably, and that is replacing that 75% of their current income. What exactly are we talking about? But also to differentiate what are some of the cost savings that one can actually get if they do take up group retirement from an employer level. Because many of us, let's be fair, let's have a frank conversation. If you are not in formal work, in formal employment, how many of us really and realistically would take up some form of a retirement fund? Now, I'm very excited to find out all of this, and I'm sure that you are sitting at home and you're asking yourself, when I'm speaking about my own retirement plan or my own retirement planning, am I actually on track? Do I have adequate savings for it to be able to take me through my retirement years? So today we're joined by Butsi Tladi, who is executive consulting at Alex Forbes.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm energized by just the introduction.
Yay! I'm excited because I know that you've got quite a long track of working at Alex Forbes,
Yes.
you were MD in healthcare at some point, and
Correct.
now here you are with us, executive in consulting. So tell me a little bit about what is involved in your day-to-day.
Geez, it's a very simple one. All that we set out to do is to help and assist people. We have a lot of people that are specialists at what they do, but in essence, what we do is to set out to ensure that people are financially well. What can we do to ensure that people have got adequate information to allow for that?
And I like that, Butsi, because I know you are very passionate about financial education.
Definitely.
Tell me why.
Because I think it's only in knowing that we're able to act.
Yes.
Without that knowledge, it is very difficult to hold people accountable.
Yes.
What we don't know is what we don't know. So at least with the information that we have, it allows us an opportunity to probably have a better life than what we probably thought we would.
And you're also passionate about women empowerment.
Of course.
Yes,
of course,
talk to me about
of course.
that.
Look, any society that allows 50% of its human capital to go unutilized or not fully utilized, it's a waste. And women in so many ways, you know the saying, you educate a woman, you educate a nation. It is just, it makes sense to allow for greater participation and inclusivity if we are to see the type of progress that we all desire.
You spoke about what you don't know what you don't know. And the reality is a lot of young people, I'd like to believe, don't take up a retirement planning, or they don't sit with a financial planner to go through their retirement planning as quickly as possible. And this is like as early as you can or as young as you can, simply because they actually don't understand what retirement planning is. If you could give it to us in layman's terms, retirement planning, what exactly are we talking about?
Right. I guess it starts with finding it difficult that we all one day will be old.
Yes.
And I guess that's a difficult thing for many
Yes.
of us to accept. But also the terminology is sometimes one that many young people can't relate to. The way I think of retirement or retiring is that it is the ability to ultimately give you the freedom to choose to work or not to work. So there will come a time when many of us either do not want to work or cannot work because we are not physically able to do so. And when that time comes, one would like to have the freedom to be able to make the choice, knowing that they've got sufficient means to enable to live a meaningful life.
So in essence, you're saying it's almost like creating predictability within your retirement years. And it starts with you making an action today or whenever you obviously get into a space where you are able to.
Spot on. It's about saying, what can I save today to ensure that I've got enough in future? It's as simple as that.
All right. And speaking about saving for the future, there is this concept of sandwich generation.
True.
What does it actually mean, and what does it look like, and how can one not perpetuate it?
That look, simply put, the reality of many of us is that we have our own children, and at the same time we've got parents that are still around. So we're blessed to have parents around still. But the reality is that we're looking after our children and looking after our parents, and we're kind of that generation in the middle. That's called the sandwich generation. And I guess the choice that we need to make now, it is about the legacy that we live. It is about whether we want our own children to have the obligation to look after us in retirement, or whether we want them freed of that obligation. And we can only really do that by the choices that we make today. It is about saving today so that my children are able to live their own lives to their fullest.
But let's talk about what options does one have. You often hear people throwing around words like pension fund or provident fund or retirement annuity. It can get a little bit overwhelming for somebody who doesn't actually understand what all of those things are. Should I be taking up a provident fund and a pension fund and a retirement annuity?
Look, simply put, all of those are retirement plans. Historically, there used to be differences about how the benefits are treated at retirement. I think in last year, all of that was harmonized to the extent that in future, they will be treated the same. So you no longer really need to worry about what the terminology is used in terms of the retirement plan that you have in place. What you need to be worried about is that you have a plan in place and where that plan is invested to ensure that you're able to retire when you need to.
And I'd like to assume that retirement is a financial goal, right? That, I mean, it's inevitable that, you know, if you are lucky enough to get to that age where you are able to retire, it's something that's going to happen. It's not a shock to you, right? But as a financial goal, how does one plan for it? Who do they need to sit with? Who do they need to speak to? Because when you join an organization and you are privileged enough to have a group employee benefits, and retirement is one of those, you may find you sign your contract, your employment contract, you are happy. They may ask you, beneficiaries for certain other benefits. But when we talk about retirement, who do you need to speak to? How frequently do you need to speak to that person to make sure that you are on course to be able to get the goal that you want in retirement years?
Yeah, definitely. Whether you are with an employer or without an employer, it is very important that your decisions are guided by an advisor. So advisors are available, but typically if you are in an employment situation, your employer will make one available to you. It is important that you speak to them because they are very knowledgeable about this. They will counsel you about the decisions that you need to make. It is also important to understand what that end goal is all about and periodically to check whether you're on track to achieve that. So that ongoing, at least annual review of what you have and whether it is red, amber or green, you should have that understanding as to what today's rand will buy you at the time of retirement and if it's sufficient or insufficient, and then what are the corrective issues that you need or corrections that you need to make to ensure that you get back on track if you're off track.
I can imagine global pandemics like COVID-19 must have brought in some insecurity and concerns around a lot of South Africans in terms of their retirement, especially those who are getting a bit closer to those retirement years. Did you guys see any of those trends?
Of course. However, for many of the members that we advise, we already would have a plan in place. The closer you get to your retirement years, we take a more conservative approach in terms of where your savings or assets should be. So that's the impact thereof will be minimized. But certainly, I think in many ways, nobody was left untouched by COVID. It made us question a lot of things. It was a time of introspection, and part of that was about what do I have in place and what does it mean if I'm not here tomorrow or if I'm disabled and not able to continue work. So all of that we saw playing out, and employers were critical to ensuring that people remain on course in terms of what their plans are.
There's another misconception in South Africa, and I think a lot of people like to really we repeat things, and the more we repeat them, we start thinking they're actual facts. Where people are saying government and the way they've structured, retirement is making themselves a nanny state, and they are overly involved in their citizens. But I'd like to assume there is a benefit to employers offering their employees a retirement benefit. What would be those benefits?
There definitely are great advantages to an employer offering this. And those benefits are both financial as well as societal. So maybe let's just take them one at a time. So firstly, an employer that offers a benefit, be it at retirement or healthcare, is not obligated to do so. But when they do so, they become or they position themselves to be an employer of choice in a world where there is a war for talent. So you're able to attract and retain good people in your organization.
Yes.
Secondly, when you offer benefits such as this, your employees tend to stay with you for longer. So you reduce your costs of training and recruitment and so forth because you've got a stable workforce. Then over and above that, there's also other benefits that you design when you set up a fund, as well as the contributions that you make to such a fund are tax deductible. Are tax deductible on behalf of, when made by an employer.
Yes.
So when you look at it from an employee's perspective, there's also benefits from there. Firstly, in the same way there are tax benefits, when an employee makes contribution towards a retirement fund, their taxable income is reduced.
Yes.
So therefore, your contributions as well as growth that one sees within such a fund is tax-free. It is only really taxed at the end when one withdraws from such a fund. So when one looks at those, just even those benefits, there's a lot of value to it. But one that is also critical is that often, should anything happen to an employee, our families and beneficiaries often look up to the employer to make a plan, particularly if it was a breadwinner. So it is important, both financial as well as societal, for an employer to be able to offer such peace of mind.
Okay, so hold on. Just for my benefit at this point. So if you, for instance, are an employee of an organization and you pass before you actually retire, is there a benefit to your extended family?
There certainly is. Certainly, the contributions that you made into that fund will be payable to your beneficiaries and your dependents. And in the same way, often these benefits are linked to others. It's not just your savings, but there's often death benefits, funeral benefits, and so forth. So there's group benefits that are often attached to your retirement that become available to your loved ones.
That is fantastic. I definitely didn't know that. That is great, and I think it really starts to change the landscape of, how South Africans can craft and actually secure their financial futures, I want to talk a little bit about, we're now taking ourselves through a journey. Here's Nicolette. She is, first of all, what age can I retire at?
You actually can retire at any age, depending on whether you've got the means to retire.
Yes.
However, I think more popular ages of retirement are 60 and 65.
Yes.
But interestingly, the data that we see or that we have, and we report on that in our member insights, indicate that 62 is actually the average age of retirement at the moment.
Oh, wow.
But you can retire at any time if you've got the means to do so.
I'm so happy you said that, because I was sitting here thinking, if we say you must retire, as old as you can, you're going to get that fire community coming down on us, because they just believe you must retire as early as possible. Okay, perfect. Fantastic. So here's Nicolette. I'm now 62 years old. I feel that I have saved enough. Well, and we must talk about that. How do you know whether you are saving enough? Because we could be going through the years of you actually saving in your retirement, you're not saving enough. But we'll circle back to that conversation. So here I am. I'm 62 years old, and I'm now ready to retire. What are my options at retirement age?
Right. Let's just look at retirement, or even maybe at resignation.
Yes.
That could either be another option that you may need to consider this.
Yes.
So there are numerous options available to you. The simplest option is at retirement, is to leave your money in your current fund. Okay. Then at that time, you're set to be a paid up member. And remember, even if you're leaving your employer, you're not necessarily leaving your fund. So those are two distinct resignations that one needs to deal with. So you could leave your employer but remain a member of your fund.
Okay.
So you're a member of your fund until you elect to resign from the fund and the benefits become payable.
Oh, okay.
So that's one option.
Yes.
The second option, particularly if you're leaving prior to retirement, is to choose to preserve such funds. You can preserve them in a preservation fund or in an individual retirement annuity. The other option, third option, is to transfer your assets to your new employer. The last and least, unless you're retiring, is to take it as cash.
Okay.
Understanding the implications of cashing out.
I can imagine tax. It's a huge one.
Tax, among others, depending on your age.
Yes.
Yeah, but you will need to be properly consulted if you are at that stage and deciding to make that choice.
And you're probably disturbing the compounding. I mean, if you were drawing and then you want to restart again, the whole compounding effect kind of falls away.
It does, and it could put you off track in terms of that goal that you mentioned right at the onset.
Yes. Speaking about taking you back, how do you actually calculate if you're going to have enough? Because I just feel like people, and I'll be very fair to you. So when I got into my first corporate job and they gave me my CTC and there was a breakdown, I looked at the contribution to my retirement and I was like, I'm going to contribute to this. Why so much money? I could get this in my bank account, right? So I think especially for young people, you know, when you know you've got to contribute, and even if your employer is contributing or subsidizing the contributions, the fact that there's some money that must come from you is sometimes a little concerning, right? True. But when you start to understand what is the importance of retirement, you now have those questions. Am I actually saving enough?
True.
How do you calculate that?
I guess it starts by asking yourself, how much are you going to need in retirement?
Okay.
And a good starting point is to check how much you're earning prior to retiring.
Yes.
And often, I mean, there's guidelines. I mean, we often talk about something called, you need to have at least 75% of what you're earning to go into retirement. That's kind of the income that one looks at.
Yes.
So you look at that and say, how much do I need to save in order to have 75% of my salary in retirement? So that's a very basic calculation, and that's just something that guides many people in terms of trying to determine whether they will have enough. Bearing in mind that hopefully by the time you get to retirement, you don't have as much debt.
True.
Your house should be paid up, your car should be paid up. Hopefully, your children should also be independent or financially independent. So yeah, all of those will come into play.
Sure, you've just put me in a space where I'm like, so now retirement planning is not even just about the fund. It's also financial planning, investment planning. It's holistic. It's not sitting on an island on its own. Because if you're talking about being debt free, it means that your home loans, for instance, need to be paid off. Your cars need to. When you take up those loans, you've also got to have a view of what your retirement looks like, how long those credit agreements are, so that by the time you get to retirement, all of those are done.
By the time you choose to retire, you must have the means to do so.
Sure. That is quite interesting. And I think a lot of people don't think about it that way. You know, I think a lot of us, we segment or fragment our personal finances. So no, I'm taken care of in terms of retirement, but what are you doing on the other side, you know, to balance this thing out? Let's talk a little bit about, you know, when people talk about retirement, they talk about it being this far away thing. Are there instances, and you said you could retire at any age, have you seen in your career path any instances where people are forced to retire?
You can't be forced to retire. However, there are certain rules that often require people to retire. For example, your conditions of employment could indicate the age by which you need to retire. And that is very much employer specific in terms of that. But yeah, strictly speaking, you shouldn't be forced to retire.
Yes.
However, if depending on your conditions of employment, you could retire.
All right. And the reason why I asked that question is because I also want to circle back to something you said about how to calculate that 75%, right? It's a general benchmark that you said one can use. So let's say you do that calculation and you realize you're coming in very short. What options do you have? Is there something like, do you need to take up another plan? Is there voluntary contributions?
Yes.
What can you do?
Look, there are a number of options, but maybe let's just mention two of those. You could choose to unfortunately work longer.
Okay.
So that you've got more time to contribute towards your retirement. You could also look to increase the amount that you're contributing towards your retirement. So those are probably the two simpler levers to pull. There are more complicated ones, but those are generally done with the assistance of your advisors. It's about how much one pay or reduces the cost of saving, the cost of savings, about cost of administration and so forth. But generally as an individual, the two big levers is about how much you're contributing and how long you're going to contribute. And obviously, do not cash out should you be changing jobs.
Yes.
Those are three of the key things that one needs to consider.
All right, lovely. And one last question, Butsi. This conversation around, where my retirement fund is going to be invested. And a lot of people speak about offshore. It's like a buzzword, offshore. I want to put my money offshore. Why would somebody want to consider offshore, and what would be obviously not a guaranteed, but what would be a benefit?
I think many of us now are beginning to appreciate the impact of currency volatility.
Yes.
Everybody understands it because we feel it with petrol costs and so forth.
Yes.
So I think one of the key advantages to having money outside of our currency environment is that first and foremost, it opens up the world of investments to a much bigger universe of investment opportunities or potential. So you can invest in a lot more than what you may have in our home country. And the second issue is that protections against currency weaknesses. So those are the two key reasons why one would consider offshore investments. And when one does that, you do it either as an individual, alternatively within your fund. So funds have an option, but there's a limit in terms of how much they can take offshore, and all of that is determined in terms of the laws that exist. But funds have that option to try and protect members of a fund against that weakening currency, and to also further diversify, because diversity is good, and a properly diversified portfolio is what one is looking for.
Sure. That has been absolutely fantastic sitting with you, and it's really getting through, retirement. And I think right now in South Africa, and I think globally, we're in a bear market. Inflation is also on the rise.
Sure.
Cost of living has just really gone up for many people. And the importance of staying invested, especially within a retirement plan, may be something that people are really thinking hard about. If you could offer, a guide or tips of how to really stay course, what would you say?
It is to remember that retirement planning is for the long term. There will be volatility, there will be ups and downs, but in the fullness of time, the best decision that one could make is to remain invested, is to continue to make small, regular contributions towards a retirement fund. It is amazing how those small contributions over a period of time can give a significant benefit that one can, that will allow one to have the freedom to retire.
Thank you so much, Butsi. They say, Biki mark mir, and I think that's really the resounding message that Butsi just told us. What do you do? Stay invested. Those little contributions that you're making, they're going to make such a huge difference, because they're going to make sure that they secure today's dreams in tomorrow's reality. And I think that's just fantastic. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting to you.
You've been absolutely fantastic. And that has been Count on our Simplified Advice and Employee Benefits podcast, where we really try to simplify every single thing that you would like to know about your employee benefits. Do remember, if you do have questions, comments, do drop them in our comment section. And if you have questions, we will try by all means to get the team at Alex Forbes to answer you as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.